We're delighted to welcome you to the Darbar Hall of the Diggi Palace at the 14th Jaipur Literature Festival protected by Dettol. Today we present book launch of Rock Babas, Ameya Prabhu in conversation with Manjeet Kripalani. Ameya Prabhu presents his debut collection of carefully crafted stories, The Rock Babas and Other Stories. Told with an attention to detail and compelling narrative flow, they are set in unexpected places and situations and chart the transformative journeys of his varied characters. Prabhu is a financial services entrepreneur with a deep commitment to writing. He speaks with Manjeet Kripalani about his craft, his inspirations and the discipline of writing. Ameya Prabhu is an entrepreneur and the managing director of NAFA Capital Advisors, an asset management and investment banking firm. He is also a partner in UAP Advisors, a financial services principal investment and strategic advisory firm focused on India and other emerging markets. Manjeet Kripalani is the co-founder of Gateway House and acts as the executive director of the institution. Please do remember to comment and ask questions by typing it into the comment section. Ladies and gentlemen, we now present the Rock Babas, Ameya Prabhu in conversation with Manjeet Kripalani.
Thank you. Welcome everyone to a exciting and interesting conversation today with Ameya Prabhu, who is a new author, and he's written a book of short stories. Thank you, Jaipur Lit Fest. We're really delighted to be having this conversation with you. Ameya, your book of short stories is just wonderful. I couldn't put it down. I read it in one go, and there are so many themes in this one book. The themes, there are cross-cutting themes. There are themes of spiritualism. There are themes of reality. They all kind of connect in some way, even though they're all so different. Can you tell us a little bit about how these themes, which are the themes for you that stand out? For me, it was the spiritualism, but how you took them through each story and what drove you to have these themes?
Sure. Thank you, Manjeet, and thank you so much for to the Jaipur Lit Fest for having me here today. It's a great honor, and I'm really honored to be even being in conversation with you because someone I admire very deeply. But I'm very happy that you like the book because I think the themes which the important themes which are prevalent in the book. I think one of my personal favorite themes was the triumph over adversity. It's been a tough year for everyone, and I think it's been a year of great change. It's been a year of tremendous amounts of upheavals, and I think if you see that each story, and while you correctly said the characters are very diverse, they're from all parts of the world, various backgrounds, genders, religions, but I think all of them are faced with some sort of adversity, either of their own creation or an external adversity. And they don't get cowed down by it. While they might initially get cowed down by it, I think it's a question of how they triumph over that adversity and go across it. I think that is the key. So I think that's an important theme which I wanted to speak about. And of course, spirituality is the essence which helps you triumph over adversity. I think the fact that you are spiritual, the fact that you do get in touch with the higher element, so to say, in the universe, I think that gives you the fortitude to triumph over this adversity. So I think, as you correctly mentioned, spirituality is a strong theme of the book. But I think if you see, I think the essence of my book would be the strength of the characters and how each character, and there's a reason why they are so diverse, the characters, is because I wanted to actually showcase humanity. So, I've had characters from all across the world from different backgrounds, so that you actually have people. So it's not, I didn't want it to be like boxed into say, oh, these are only certain characters from India or of a certain age. So I think the idea was to, and again, this is also across time. So the idea was to showcase that the triumph over adversity is actually the essence of human spirit. And I think that is something which we could all do a lot with, because it's also a book of hope. It's a book that, keeps the hope flying strong. So I think that's something, that was a message I really wanted to bring out from the book.
And so you really answered my second question, is that you've written this very international book and you've explained yourself. So I'm going to look at the various angles that you've brought in that I have seen repeated in all your stories. So one is spiritualism through shamanism, through Buddhism, through Hinduism, all kinds of spiritualism. And inner strength is also a spiritual asset. Then you've got colonialism, you've got greed, you've got betrayal. And can you tell us a little bit about, were all these themes things that you have seen in your life through other people, experienced yourself, and therefore, because there's a great deal of authenticity to the way these themes are brought out and written about, but not in sort of a, it's, you reflect these themes, but you understand them. So maybe you've got more themes, but these are colonialism, definitely, it impacts India, greed, betrayal, all these things are human.
Sure. So just to answer what you said, I think if you see the characters, and you mentioned, well, there are Native American characters, there are characters who are Protestant or Catholic, there are in Buddhist, as you mentioned, Hindu, and also in the Rainbow Prince, we have a very strong young Arab Muslim character who also, through his beliefs in both his country and in Islam, actually finds the fortitude to do right. So I think the message which we are trying to bring out is that spiritualism is the universal truth. It's the sea. Yes. And the religions are the various rivers that flow into the sea. But ultimately, they all flow into the sea. So I think that is the way we must think of religion versus spirituality. I mean, religion is also very important because when you're inland, unless you are on the river, you can't actually sail back to the sea. So religion is also very important. But let's remember that ultimately all these rivers flow into the sea. And I think that is an element which I really wanted to focus on with the book, and in terms of the juxtaposition of religion and spirituality. And hence we have characters from various religions. Then in terms of colonialism, it's something I feel very strongly about, having been born in India, and the fact that, we are a country which is not 2,000 years old, we are thousands of years old, and if you see even just the last 2,000 years, I mean, I'm not even going to go beyond that, but even the last 2,000 years, which is fairly young for a country like India, for 17 centuries, so 1,700 of the last 2,000 years, India and China have been over 50% of the global GDP. And that's actually what attracted countries who are actually much poorer than us, European countries at the time, to come and colonize us and actually strip away a large part of our wealth. And I mean, what happened India was still a strong country. It's managed to regain what it is. I'm a very frequent visitor to Africa. I was there recently as well. When you see what colonialism has done to the countries of Africa, I mean, these are a proud people. These are a people who are intelligent. They are proud. But I remember when I was in a couple of years ago, when I was in Uganda, or even recently when I was in Zimbabwe, they still refer to all their waterfalls and their lakes by the colonial names, like Lake Victoria, Lake Alfred, Victoria Falls. But for example, Victoria Falls was called Mosi Otunya in the local language, for thousands of years. But people don't refer to it as that. So if you've seen in Memoirs of a Dictator, I actually focused a lot on the local African names of these people, because I think to go and change someone's name is the worst form of indignity you can do to them. So I think and hence, colonialism. And lastly, I always speak, we speak a lot about politics and corruption. And I always say that it's very difficult to completely eliminate corruption, because to eliminate corruption, you have to eliminate greed. And greed is the most basest and basic of human qualities, which have been there from the time Adam and Eve stole that apple, So I think to change human, so I think I really like to go deep into my characters. And of course, all of us experience a bit of all of these, emotions, but I really like to go very deep into my characters and actually bring out some of these baser human emotions, or even heightened emotions through them. So I think I spent a lot of time on character research. I spent a lot of time going deep into the characters as well,
Which brings me to my next question. This is a lockdown book. You wrote it during the lockdown. So 2 questions, but first, why during the lockdown? What prompted you to do this? And then I'm going to follow up with how you did your research.
Sure. So why during the lockdown is actually an easy one. It's time is the greatest luxury we have, and at the same time, we have to realize that time is the only finite commodity we have. The one thing which never comes back is time. Even if you lose money, you can get it back, but time is something which never comes back. So I think, I know, I mean, and they explained in the intro, I do run a financial services business and asset management business. So that does take a lot of my time. So when I was stuck in Mumbai during the lockdown with, literally all alone in an apartment, I realized, let's make the best use of, the time that I have. I mean, it's very rare that I have literally so much time from having, absolutely a very busy schedule. So, and so, in a way, I think, again, it's adversity, I guess, because when life suddenly puts you locked up in a room, let's see what best you can do with that instead of cribbing and crying. So that's when I had the luxury of time. I started writing, and I finished it within 3 months, actually. I started
That's
writing in March, and I finished it before my birthday in June, so before the 17th.
that's
So I finished in
fantastic.
yeah.
You have to please tell all of us who are also writers what you do with writer's block. Did you have it? Did you not have it?
We all have writer's block, let's be honest, I think. But, I feel a lot of us are creative. I mean, I believe everyone can be creative. Everyone has talent. And I think what was lacking in me was the discipline to actually sit down and write a book. So I think, if you talk to a great sportsman of our era, he would say sport is 20% talent, 80% discipline.
Correct.
And I would say the same thing about writing. I think writing is talent, but a lot of it is discipline. So I think even with writer's block, I mean, some people would say, oh, let the creative juices flow, etc. And they do flow, but I think one has to create a regime for yourself, for them, or even for those juices to flow, So I think, and I think that's the, at least for me. I mean, everyone has their own formula, but for me, I think that's a good way to, do something in a time-bound manner.
Yeah. So that's one. The second thing is that your characters were, I mean, in 3 months to finish this book, you must have already in your head had a sense of these characters. Have this been stewing in you for a while? Did you write down little notes and say, here are the 10 characters I would love to explore more?
So, I do take, I have on my phone, I have notes of stories I want to write. So I've been mulling over this book for a long time. It's not that the thought came to me during the thought was there for a long time. And I used to always, so whenever I was traveling or whenever I had some time and a thought came to me in terms of a character or a theme. So for example, say the Rock Babas actually came to me a few years ago. I was thinking about how cool it would be to have a bunch of rock music playing, holy men in the Himalayas somewhere. And so that thought came to me. So I actually even wrote down a page of a theme, for that at the time. And that was the base for the story. Or, for example, the Manifestations of Unpower, which is my favorite story. It's actually an ode to both Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde by Robert Louis Stevenson, which was my favorite story one of my favorite stories growing up, as well as an exploration into, say, what Heath Ledger went through when he was shooting for The Dark Knight, and also for each method actor. So I think, so these thoughts do come down, I do pen it down, but when I start writing, that's when the story really evolves. And I'm also someone who actually does research as I go through the writing, so, and that's been something I've followed from my college days. So even when I wrote a paper on history or I wrote a paper on economics, I used to always do my research while writing rather than do the so that, I mean, that's just something which works better for me. So, but yeah, so while I intensively researched about each and everything. So for example, if the Manifestations and Power is about, there's a lot of Native American themes in the book, and I actually did a lot of research on the Native American tribes, where they're from, where they were, and the original inhabitants of all the lands where the stories are based. But that research went on as I was writing the story, So that's how it was.
And so you had the character, and as you were telling the story, you were researching as you went.
Yeah.
Is that something that writers do, or is it just something that Ameya does?
No, so I think I'm not sure about other writers. I think a lot of writers do prefer to do research in advance, have a general
right.
theme of the story. But this is something which works for me. I think it's like I always tell people, like intermittent fasting. I do intermittent fasting. I don't know if it works for others, but it works for me. So I think similarly, this is my little mantra. But of course, I have a general sketch of the character. I mean, it's not that I don't know how the character will end up. I do know the general sketch. I do know the general, framework of the story. but the undulations and the of the story evolve as I start writing. And of course, and the research gets deeper, in terms of, so for example, in Man with the Beard, which is based in Colombia, the story starts off in a place in Cartagena where I have actually been. But the way it goes through Magdalena and, into the Magdalena province and the politics of bananas, which might sound trivial to us, but I mean, it's, the most controversial and bloody, and one of the most bloodied fruits in the history of the world. So I think a lot of research went down into that. And and it's again, it's that recurrent theme of colonialism which you mentioned, because colonialism is not just about Africa or India, or it's also about Latin America and Central and Latin America. Right. So I think that's another recurrent theme which comes in.
Correct. And also, I mean, talking about, so many of your stories are so, in some sense, current, because we know that there are protests going on just now about bananas in France. And so it's very current. I'd like to take our viewers into your 10 short stories. And then, Ameya, I'm going to ask you to read from one of them. I have to tell you that The Unpower is also my favorite story. But and all our readers are going to love it, but they're all wonderful. So the stories are The Accidental Philanthropist, which is based in Japan; The Manifestation of Unpower, which is in the United States; The Memoirs of a Dictator is in a country in Africa.
A country, called Swaganda. It's a fictional,
somewhat mythical but real still in so many ways. Agent Holder is based in the US.
In the state of Georgia in the US, yes.
Okay, I'm going to read it out and you can tell us who the protagonist is and who The Rainbow Prince.
The Rainbow Prince is about a prince called Prince Hamdan, and it's based in a, again, fictional Arab country called Al-Qasriya, which in Arabic literally means the fortress. But so that's where it's based.
Terrific. The Man with the Beard, which you've just said.
Man with the Beard is based in Colombia, in the Magdalena province of Colombia. And so that's where it's based.
Yeah, and everybody who has visited Cartagena is going to have a completely different view of it now, instead of just this beautiful place with sun and sand and tourism and resorts. Yeah. The Broken Nightingale.
So the Broken Nightingale starts off in Bengal, in pre-divided Bengal, and it ends up in Mumbai.
Yes.
So it's also a journey through India, in a way.
And that is a beautiful story also. The Rock Babas, which is...
So the Rock Babas it's about a Swiss hotelier, but it starts in Kathmandu and takes you through your entire, the base camp and the trek up the Kanchenjunga. And then the question is, where is this ashram of the Rock Babas in the Himalayas? No one knows. It's a secretive ashram of the Rock Babas. So
it's Shangri-La. It's somewhere there. But you've also, in this book, you've written with such affection and with such dignity about the Sherpas, because really people do talk about them, but unless you've been a mountaineer, you really don't understand how very fantastic they are. And the shepherd.
The shepherd again it starts off in England. It's actually also, there are elements of Spain, because there are two important characters in the shepherd: the priest and the lady. And the lady actually is from Spain. And actually, if anything, I think that she is in a way the real shepherd. If you see the end of the story, so actually she is the main character for me. But she is based out of Spain and in the UK,
That's wonderful.
In the southern UK.
So I'm going to ask you to read from. Obviously, your favorite and my favorite is The Manifestations of Unpower. Would you like to take our viewers through?
Sure. So, just before I start, I think The Manifestations of Unpower, which I shared briefly earlier, it's about an actor, who so William Jackson. And so William is the main character, and he also is he's a British actor from Kenilworth, and incidentally, Kenilworth is near Warwick, where I went to university. So, but he also goes by the name Bill in the US when he becomes an actor. And I created this specific identity of William and Bill because actually it holds true to the story, because he goes to the story of the actor is he goes very deep. So when he's a method actor, someone like Daniel Day-Lewis or maybe Amir Khan, closer to home. And he goes so deep into his character that when he's throughout whenever he shoots a movie, he actually remains in that character, he becomes a different person. Hence the William and Bill sort of identity as well. And this story is about him playing a very dark character, a character called the chemist. It's about in a way, think of Heath Ledger getting into the character of the Joker for The Dark Knight, and he goes so deep into his character in this book that he actually can't get out of that character, and he uses an old Native American shamanistic ritual to do that. He misuses that actually, because this was a ritual which is actually meant for you to connect with your inner self, and he misuses that. So the story, the paragraph I'll be reading is towards the end of the story, and he has just been So what happens to the character is he doesn't know what he's doing when he's not in character. So again, a bit from Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. So his daughter and his wife have just left him. He's just read a letter from her to him, wherein they've abandoned him because of his behavior, and that's where this story starts. So I'll just read. As he read the text, William's heart filled with fear and trepidation. He knew that he'd reached a breaking point and had to act urgently. His soul was no longer in control of his mind and was being hijacked by his alter ego. Before being permanently transformed into that alternative individual, he had to take steps to do so while he still retained moments of lucidity. He took a flight to Billings, Montana, and drove to the North Cheyenne Indian Reservation, where he had first undergone the meditative personality transformative ritual under the watchful guidance of the shaman Okum Gache. Okum Gache was seated cross-legged outside a tent and had a large bonfire burning beside him. He was expecting William and looked at him with sorrowful eyes. Okum Gache had been furious with William for having disobeyed his advice, but on seeing William in the state that William was in, his anger melted away. He held him in a close, tight embrace and kissed him on the forehead. William burst into tears and cried uncontrollably for a few minutes. He then laid his head on Okum Gache's lap, who lovingly caressed his hair. My son, I had warned you of the powers of the elements and its dangerous repercussions, should they be misused. You have fed the wrong wolf, and now you have a demon within you who's rapidly consuming you. Yet, I can see that there is some fight left in you, and that is what has brought you here to me. However, the remedy to your affliction is beyond my powers, but I can most certainly guide you. It is undeniably risky and fraught with mortal danger, but it is your only option for redemption before you are completely overcome by that dark force. At the hour of dawn, you must consume a tea mixed with the juice of the peyote cactus and use that elevated mind space to connect with your patron lord, Unpower. Remember, Unpower is the god of dawn, and both darkness and light come under his mighty domain. He makes no judgments, but merely blesses the devotee's aspirations and ensures their outcome. It is you who must fight tooth and nail with the dark entity that resides within you and demonstrate a deep-rooted desire to expunge it. You must fight this battle alone, my son. And if you show genuine intent and implore him from the deepest corners of your heart, Unpower will bless you with the desired outcome. Believe in the manifestations of Unpower, William, for they are the only hope you can cling on to. Now, you must rest, for the hour of dawn is not yet nigh.
Thank you. I so love this character, and the fact also what has made this particular story so meaningful is the fact that the Americans have literally forgotten all about the Aboriginal population. They've simply locked them up into reserves and sent them out. So having you bring out this particular character as being such a positive and valiant and kind spiritual guide is really wonderful.
Yeah, so I believe that the Native Americans were some of the most intellectually, and some of the guys who were most connected with nature. And unfortunately for them, and also if you see for the original inhabitants of the countries of Africa, when the colonizer came with gunpowder, there's very little they could do. Or when they came with smallpox in the US, it was the first 90% of the Native American population actually died of disease. They were given by missionaries, gave them infected blankets, which caused rampant smallpox. So, it was really genocide. I think we shouldn't shy away from using that word, but what happened to the Native Americans was genocide. And I think I really do believe that one has to speak about them. I think one has to give voice to them. And also what is important is, I was watching Biden's inauguration with great hope, and I heard Jennifer Lopez saying, "This land is my land, this land is your land." But I think what's very important to remember, it's actually Native American land. All of the United States of America is actually Native American land. And I think, when I was talking about research, so the story is based in LA, it's in Cheyenne and Montana. So I actually spent a lot of time in researching who are the original inhabitants of these lands. And it's amazing to see that some of them have been completely wiped out. They've been wiped out from history, they've been wiped out from the planet. And for you not to have legacy, I think, at the end of the day, and as I mentioned that in the book, I think in a way we live, our reincarnation in a way. Of course, we reincarnate many times in this life, is what I said. But also, I think you live on through your descendants. Your ideas, your thoughts. Today, if we believe in the Rig Veda from thousands of years ago, it's because we've lived on through that. But who carries forward these traditions? Who carries forward these oral traditions for a community that's been completely wiped out? So I think I have a lot of. I feel very connected with the Native Americans, and I think New Zealand has done an admirable job, in terms of what they've done with their population. Australia has a long way to go. I think all countries need to do a lot, but I think the US needs to do the most, because it's actually their land.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And also, I remember you telling me that there was that you were a night owl, that you write through the night.
Yeah, so it's funny because and again, I guess that's my inner William and Bill, because when I come with work, with my day job, so to say, I'm actually like, I wake up early, go to work, for me, because especially markets open relatively early, and so when it comes to my professional career, I'm like a very day person. I really don't like to work much once the sun goes down, but I think the creative juices only start flowing at night. Even during the lockdown, I was working in the day, and I used to start writing around 8 p.m. It's so yeah, I think, again, I think it's an old college habit, because I used to write all my papers at night, in the death of night, when everything was quiet. So I think old habits die hard. So yeah, so writing is completely night owl business. It's like.
So tell us a little bit about the discipline. So even if you're writing through the night, did you keep a schedule? Did you get up? Did you have your breakfast? How did you do that? How did you decide what hours? Because you're disciplined.
I had weekly targets for words, in terms of how many words I wanted to finish, or let's say I had a generic idea of when I wanted to finish the stories. And of course, you don't really hit them every day, because you do have some days where you are in a beautiful flow when you could probably write 3,000 words a night, which is a lot, whereas there are other days where you could struggle to write 500-600 words. So that does happen. But as long as I was close to my weekly target, I was okay with that. But also, secondly, this was the lockdown, right? So everything blended into one, really. Your weekends, your days, everything was one. And your meals. So I think so. The discipline was more in terms of the number of words I wanted to write per day, and of course, I had to also get work done during the day. So I think it was. So I think it was more an output-based discipline rather than a very regimented. So as long as I hit my output targets for the week, I was okay. Which I think more or less I did, and I was also very lucky that once as I was writing, my mother, who's been a senior editor with both the Times of India and also a publishing house called Popular Prakash, and she was editing it as I went. So I was very lucky to have that in-house editor, so to say, literally an in-house editor.
That really helps, yeah.
And so that was great.
Yeah, and also, I happen to know her, but I can see the sensitivity is all intact, and there are no places in the book where anything grates. And that's really lovely, because when you read something, you want to just flow into the book with the book. And so nothing is grating. And I also know you've done something. You've had a pretty fantastic year last year. You not only produced a book, you produced two wonderful things. You produced the book and you produced the marriage.
Yes. I also.
Congratulations.
Thank you so much. And So my then fiance, now wife, was very kind. She also read all my stories as I went by. So I was joking that I literally wooed her with my words.
Yes, you
And
did.
so she also really she read every story. She gave critical feedback, and I think she likes the shepherd the most, the story,
Yeah.
and which I think I've noticed that appeals a lot to women. The shepherd, but I also, because it's a very strong female character
Yes.
in the shepherd, and yeah, so I think that's something which she really likes.
And in
But
fact, your characters are sort of gender neutral. Nobody is less or more, and that even the Nightingale is a very strong female character.
yeah, I think the world should be gender neutral, right? I don't know why we try to ascribe. I mean, so for example, even I recently took over as the chairperson of the Indian Chamber of Commerce for the Western region, and one of the first things I did was, let's call it chairperson. I don't want to be called chairman. I
Mm.
think it's important for things to be gender neutral, because
Yeah.
I mean there are things which people are good at, and it's incidental that they're male or female.
Yes.
I think that's the way we should see it, and I think. And it's important for someone to bring that message out. Someone asked me the other day in one of the other interviews I was doing, is that are you an idealist, and is idealism, is idealism relevant in today's world? And so I said that, well, I'm quite practical. So, well, in the sense that I'm an idealist in thought, but I'm practical on the ground. But and you're right, the world is becoming very cynical. But someone has to be the flag bearer of idealism in today's world.
Absolutely.
I think unless you have that voice out there, you're going to be drowned out by the cynics. So I
Yes.
think it's important to have the and I think literature is a very powerful tool, because this will outlive all of us. I
Yes.
think so that's something which I really wanted to also convey from my words.
And in particular, I think for younger people in this world with so much coming at them, it's very important for them to. Idealism is a fantastic guide
Yeah,
because you
yeah,
know what it is. You know you can have a dream, and it
yeah,
doesn't
yeah.
stay that way. It can be realized. You want to write a book. You wrote a book about scenarios which are very clear, right and wrong. Although there's a lot of nuance to it, it's very clear what the right and wrong is, and it's kind of affirming.
Yeah, no, so I think it's good to be idealistic. I think it's good to dream, but at the same time, it's good to have steps towards that dream. It's like going
Yes.
back to, as I said, it's good to want to write a book, but it's important to have the discipline to, write that book. So but I think one should dream, because if all of us, are positive, and again, positivity is very important.
Mm.
Even through COVID, which is afflicting the world currently, I think the one theme which I've personally believed in is stay positive. I think if we, because negativity is like deflation, it's worse than
Correct.
inflation. So I think I'm wearing my economic hat right now, but I think I think it's very important to be positive. It's very important to think that one can overcome adversity. And Newton's law of energy says that each action has an equal and opposite reaction. So if
Correct.
you think positivity and radiate that to the universe, positivity comes back to you, and that's what I call good luck. I think it's just your own positivity being radiated back to you as luck.
Fantastic. So we're going to open for. I have lots of questions for you, Ameya, but
Oh,
we're going to
wow.
open for audience Q&A, and we have one from Nana. Um, would you advise a beginning, an early novice short story writer to spend his or her first submission to well-known publishers or the lesser-known publications, or simultaneously to all? This is really the nuts and bolts of writing a book.
So I would say that I was a bit lucky, again, in the sense that, speaking about dreaming. So, I was very clear that when I wrote my book, I wanted Amazon to be my publisher,
Hmm.
because, because of the fact that I think that I could get a pretty large global reach, with that.
Right.
So when I wrote the book, I was connected by a mutual friend to his friend, Gautam Padmanabhan, who at Westland. And Gautam and I had a call, and it's not till Gautam sent me his email address, which was at Amazon.com, that I actually realized. Then I went and did some research. That I actually realized that Westland was a 100% subsidiary of Amazon. So I think I was very lucky. I wanted, and they were very kind. Gautam and my editor Karthika were very kind to agree to publish the book. and then they published it. And and so I was very, very fortunate in that sense that what I dreamt of happened. And I actually didn't. And the thing is, I didn't speak to anyone else. The minute they agreed, I didn't even want. I mean, I didn't even send a draft to anyone else. Because so I was very fortunate in that sense. So my thing is that I think if one has a certain publisher, why not go to the bigger ones? I mean, there's no harm. But I think what is important is to go to the ones with the right distribution and to go to the ones who believe in you. Because I was very lucky that even today, the book, while we're launching it officially today, it's been available for sale for about a month and a bit, and it's already been sold in over 30 countries. And so we've had readers everywhere from Japan to Mexico to Switzerland to Spain, to the US, so Australia. So I've been very lucky with that. And so I think my answer to the question is, I think believe in yourself, find the guys who do the right distribution, and most importantly, the guys who believe in you, because when you're aligned with your publisher, like literally magic can happen.
Yes. So, Ameya, another question. This is from me. I'm going to hold off for a second. When you do the editing of the book, do you have to really edit it yourself, or do you work with an editor who, after you find the publisher? I mean, what are the process 1 to 5? What are the steps? Or do you really find your own editor?
So I edited myself first. I ran an edit myself. Then I had another edit from my mother, who's actually a professional editor. So I guess I was lucky in that sense that I had a professional editor at home. And then so that's when I sent it to the publisher. I would, however, recommend any writer to have an external piece of eyes edited before sending it to a publisher. Okay. Because, I think there are always things which you don't see. Like, I mean, there were lots of things which I missed out on. And, you do have that. I know people speak about writer's block, but there's something worse called writer's blindfold. You actually don't sometimes see your own, errors. So I think I would definitely recommend that they do an external editing, maybe hire someone to do that. And then, of course, my publishers or themselves suggested several edits. They were actually very kind. They went with the flow of the story, and a lot of them were. But again, there were a lot of mistakes just in grammar or writing, which again you overlook because you are writing at such a large volume. I mean, correct. I think there are 90,000 plus words in this book, so I think it's good to have that 3-layered, yourself first, so that the core remains true. Then you have an external editor who is, let's say, your editor, who helps you fine tune it, make it razor sharp, and then of course the publisher's viewpoint, because at the end of the day, the publisher is also a massive stakeholder in your book. So for their viewpoint, and I think one must respect editorial comments, while I think they all mean well.
Absolutely. And in terms of when you were deciding how short to keep your stories, some can be really short, some can be long. Did you think to yourself, if you said it's 90,000 words, how did you break it up? Did you say, 10,000 per story, or did it just depend on how it flowed?
So firstly, I think the primary question is why did I choose the short stories medium? And the reason why I did that is I do believe that the modern reader, myself included, I used to read a lot of novels when I was younger, but will I read Anna Karenina now? I highly doubt it, right? So I think the modern reader doesn't have as much time on his or her hands. So they do. So I think the short stories are a good medium, which we've seen with the advent of the web series. People do watch more web series today than movies. So similarly, I do think that if I can convey a story in a limited amount of time, they can all be read, distinctly. So I think that's why I chose this medium. But and again, I think it's a lot tougher to tell a story in 10,000 words than it is to say that in 100,000 words. So it was tricky. But you're right. I thought of doing an average of 10,000 words. A couple of stories are slightly lesser. A couple of them are a lot more because the story flowed so well that I couldn't end it at that point in time. So it was the flow really dictated that. So if the flow of a certain story was ebbing before 10,000, I did not stretch it. But at the same time, if it was flowing beyond 10,000, I did not restrict it. I wanted to take it to its natural conclusion. So I think the flow really matters, in a story.
So you follow your instinct, Ameya, really, in how to keep it tight and right.
Yeah. So I think, and again, when you are writing a story, you do know how it is going to end, right? You do know how much more do you want to convey you do know how much more you want a character to build. So
Right.
one is instinct, but also it's. I mean, that's the flair of being a writer. I mean, that's your bread and butter, really.
Yes,
So I think that's
correct.
that's what you bring to the table.
So, Ameya, do you have another book sitting inside you?
So I think not immediately. Like I have lots of ideas, lots of thoughts. I do want to write alternative history. It's been. I mean, I wanted to write something on the alternative history of Africa. I mean, imagining a few other things. But so I'm doing some research on that right now. I mean, this will actually require a lot of research in advance because
So much has been destroyed.
exactly. And again, it's alternative history, so it will actually be not exactly what's happened. So it'll be reverse colonialism. I want to look at, especially West Africa, which was quite wealthy at a point in time, being the colonialists rather than the other way around. So it's going to be like a reverse colonialism, alternative history. So I've been thinking on those lines. That's one. And but to be honest, other than, and I had written a play when I was younger in school called The Echo when I was in UWC. So one thought which is to re-edit it and maybe send it out to publishers. But I think for now I want to let's get the story of the Rock Babas out there a bit more.
Yeah.
Let more people be connected to it.
Yeah, thank you very much, Ameya. This was a delight. I'm so happy to. This is the books, folks. It's got a really attractive cover too. And Ameya, thank you so much. Wishing you all the best, and look forward to many more books from you. Short stories along. We'll be there reading them all. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Manjeet. Thank you to everyone at Jaipur Lit Fest for having me, and of course, thank you to my publishers, Westland, and the entire team at Westland. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you for allowing us a glimpse into your craft and inspiration. It was truly a wonderful session. We'd also like to thank our celebration partner Diageo for their support, and thank you all for being such a lovely audience. Do remember to pick up your copy of the book from the Amazon online bookstore. As you're aware, the cultural sector has been critically impacted by the pandemic, and while we have braced ourselves to embrace the new normal, we have struggled to ensure that we continue to bring to you a free flow of knowledge and ideas. We would love your support towards Teamwork Arts. Any amount is welcome. Please do remember to tweet using hashtag Jaipur Literature Festival 2021 and tag us at Jaipur Lit Fest. The festival is protected by Dettol. We hope to see you in our other sessions.